So how many people are estimated to have spent at least one night in hospital last year after an attack by a stranger? And the answer is a staggering 26,000.
Right, let's talk about violence, being attacked on the street. I say on the street, I want to sort of separate it out from domestic violence and so forth. These are sort of attacks by people you don't know. Almost 800,000 of us are attacked by strangers every year. Less than half of those victims go to the police for help, which perhaps explains why only 20% of their attackers are ever brought to justice. Now, of course, not every victim of a beating will experience long-term psychological trauma, but most are going to show some signs of stress, difficulty sleeping perhaps, or feelings of insecurity, while those who've experienced a stronger, more life-threatening assault can develop symptoms of post-traumatic stress, depression, anxiety, even psychosis. You know, people are mugged for their phones, their training shoes, perhaps for a few pounds. Last year, 90-year-old Nancy Reeve from the West Mids, left bleeding and bruised when she was mugged as she lay flowers at her husband's grave. And her attacker fled with just 50 quid. Then there was West Sussex World War II vet, 85-year-old George Gibb. He needed hospital treatment when he was hit around the head by a robber trying to steal his briefcase. The thief got away with the case. It contained just a few papers from his local British Legion meeting. Now, in a moment, we're going to hear your tales of being attacked by strangers. And the reason we're doing this, and Donald and I were just talking about during the break, there's so much violence out there that it virtually doesn't register anymore.
No, it's extraordinary. When I was reading the news on ITN, stories were coming through of two teenage girls who were having a bullying fight and encounter with another girl, and she was babysitting a girl and they grabbed the girl and threw it in front of an oncoming bus.
This is the baby?
A baby. And I just think it's so common.
Did that make much news?
It didn't. It was a little paragraph. I was like shocked. You know, of all the murders and things that we've reported on, I was so shocked that two teenage girls could grab a baby and throw it in front of an oncoming bus, and the bus driver thankfully stopped. But, you know, it's so common, and the police think it's just spit and sawdust. You know, this is just the way the game is played.
Go on,
but the reality is, the reality is, the trauma is, and Amira was on court and she gave great evidence behind a screen, and she said she had suffered post-traumatic stress from her assault. And
take us through. So, I mean, you mentioned at the beginning, so you go to the toilets, you come out, and you're set upon, and she's the one that tries to protect you.
So the mob attacking me, I'm behind her, and I'm protecting nobody. And this is a really sad thing because, you know, the good days of the Good Samaritan are long gone, where anyone will jump in and protect you. The only person to protect me in a pub full of people was my wife. She tried to protect me, 10 people there, and she was battered and bruised and punched. And you said bruises go after a while. Her bruises were there like a injection, MMR vaccine, imprints on her arms for nearly 12 months. And but her experience is like quite common, a little more high profile, but up and down the country we see horrific cases.
But you're saying there was a pub full of people?
Yep.
And nobody stepped in to help?
Nobody stepped in to help. Not only that, people are very reluctant to get involved, and even the greatest tragedy is in stockbroker Surrey Belt, people with good incomes, people with responsibility, with privilege, education to stand up and be counted, and because they were scared...
Can you blame them when we hear about knife culture? No. I was telling them during the break, I mean, it's a long time ago when I was last mugged, thank God, but in Croydon, there was actually a race attack, but by a bus stop, middle of the day, 15, 20 people at the bus stop where I'm standing, and I'm screaming at them to help me and my girlfriend, and nobody does a thing. And that's back in the days before we worried about everybody carrying a knife. Well, I have to say, if I saw a woman taking a beating, I'd like to think I would have it in me to do something.
Well, I mean...
Yeah, but you might if there was one attacker on her, two attackers. What happens if it's 4 or 5 or 6? Then you'd think.
Yeah, but a pub full of people,
if they'd all got together, they would have been...
But here's what's wrong with the justice system, is that Amira gave evidence, and she said that the abuse she got as a vulnerable witness with a brain tumour, who's clearly a victim, the abuse she got at the hands of the defence barristers compounded and traumatised her to such an extent that, given the choice between giving evidence in the defence of her husband trying to prosecute, she would give him the choice again, having endured the assault and then endured the redoubling of the assault at the hands of defence barristers in the courtroom. She thought she would never do it. And that's the real tragedy. She stood up and she was in tears giving evidence. She asked for a break. She wasn't even given a break. And it's like... So I couldn't believe that genuine victims get their abuse they suffer in the streets is multiplied by the abuse they get at the hands of defence barriers, to the extent that a mob of hooligans attacking me. And it's really, I was shocked, because I wasn't allowed to see the CCTV evidence. I wasn't allowed to see my statement for 18 months. And when I saw the video, I thought only 4 people attacked me. It was a mob. And I was like, it's absolutely shocked.
There was CCTV of it?
There was CCTV evidence of them and only one person for the court. But to my mind, I was just traumatised by what Amira had to go through. And, you know, it's terrible to have to say is that here's a person who's married to an investigative reporter saying, listen, if you see a crime like this, the best advice, not my advice, but the best advice she would give is, please walk on by, because your life may not be worth living. And,
Michael, have you had any run-ins?
Oh, touch wood, you know, I haven't. I can only imagine how it can obviously traumatise one, and I think that that would also depend on your experience too. I'm trying to think, if I was attacked and I was able to defend myself, I would try and find confidence in the fact that, OK, I know I can defend myself.
You say that, and what was the story about you're telling me about your son?
Well, I know, you see, as a mum of 4 boys, I always thought, what can I do about this? The least I could do is teach my kids judo, so I've always driven them to judo lessons.
Oh, you didn't actually teach them yourself?
No, I wish, actually. Something I should learn. But one of them is really good at judo. He's a black belt, and he is the one who actually was attacked on his way home from judo one night, and he was wearing his iPod, so he didn't hear. Somebody came up from behind and attacked him. He said if only he'd been able to see them coming, he could have done something really swish.
So he was flattered.
He says the only thing, and he was really shocked. He said the only thing that saved him from being badly injured was that he did instinctively know how to fall. Funnily enough, but yeah, he was even robbed of his judo gear, because that was what was in his bag. I mean, it's crazy. It's horrible.
What are you going to do about it, though? Do you know? I mean, I sit and hear these stories, and loads of people phoning in already. What are we going to do about it?
It's just terrible.
They know that nobody's going to... People are unlikely to jump to defence. They know that. They know that.
Well, and more than that, if anything happens, they also know witnesses, like in our case,
won't come forward.
Will not come forward.
Yes,
as I said, the jury sent a letter to the judge at the end of all the evidence, and the jury said, where are all the witnesses?
Yeah.
And you're thinking, if the jury's saying that, it's extraordinary.
OK. Let's throw it open to you. Love to hear your stories, long-term effects of being attacked on the street. Kirsty.
OK, first we have Linda on line 1.
Cheers, Kirsty. Linda, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for picking up the phone. Thank you to BT for allowing us to speak on the phone. What's your story then, Linda?
Well, 6 years ago, my daughter was 18 and she was working just up the road, not 5 minutes away, in a chippy. And as she was walking home from work that night at 9:30, she was attacked by some girls, a group of girls.
Any reason?
She'd been told to bar them from the chippy while she was working there because they were causing trouble. So she was in the front line because she was serving in the chippy. She was saying, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to serve you. So when she walked home, she walked past them, and that was when they attacked her. They attacked her from behind. They knocked her unconscious, broke her nose, stamped on her, and did lots of things to her anyway. And we spent 5 hours in casualty with her, and it was, it was horrendous. And we were offered at the time by a lot of people for them to go out and get justice, and I said no, let the police deal with it. I want this done properly.
Yeah.
And the girls got cautions. They were both under 16. The 2 that got convicted got cautions, and I felt absolutely horrendous because I felt like I hadn't protected my daughter myself, even though there was nothing I could do.
Linda, if you'd turn back the clock and go through the same process again, knowing that the last time it happened the girls got a caution and your friends came round and offered to go and sort them out, what would you do this time? Still go to the police?
No. And I feel awful saying that.
No, I can totally understand.
I mean, she's 6 years on, and she's got a scar on her forehead. She won't have her hair up anymore. She has a fringe, and she's had a fringe from that day. And these are the sort of
What about psychologically, Linda? I mean,
she can't walk past a group of girls without it.
No. I bet.
And even you'd think really a group of boys would be more upsetting, but she finds girls a lot more intimidating now than boys.
And they're talking, aren't they? I mean, they're talking about not sending people who commit violent crimes such as GBH to prison automatically.
And the problem is that if somebody does an assault and gets away with it, a common assault, they get a caution for it, we all know that they're crimes and they do escalate. And I was just so delighted, at least there was one conviction in our case, and it sends the message out. But I've already gone through about 4 or 5 cases. My car was trashed, I was assaulted before the Crown Prosecution Service and the police got their act together to get one conviction. So it's so hard and it's depressing. But there is an alternative justice system which is run by gangsters, and unfortunately, if the police and the courts don't solve matters, then you're a hand in the streets.
Would you blame Linda for seeking alternative? No, I wouldn't. It's not the right thing to say, maybe, but I wouldn't blame her.
And yet we are the country with the most CCTV cameras in Europe or something.
If you can never get the tapes out of them. Linda, thank you. Our best to your daughter. Let's have another.
On line 4, we have Cheryl.
Cheryl, good morning.
Morning, Matthew.
Morning. Thanks for picking up the phone as well. What's your story?
It happened a few years ago. My sister and I got a bus back from a night out in Greenwich, and we'd had a couple of drinks, nothing major. And we went to get on the bus, and there was a group of young guys on the top deck. We sat on the bottom deck, and they threw something down the stairs, which sort of nearly hit my sister in the face, near her eye. So I grabbed it. It was just like a bit of wire, so I grabbed it and went upstairs and said, "Look, you know, can you just be careful?" And nothing was said until they went to get off the bus, and then they just started hurling abuse at us and spitting at us just over and over, so we were just covered in it. And so I went to the bus driver and said, "Look, you need to pull off." You know, I was shouting at him, and he just didn't pull away. And then eventually they stopped, and he pulled off. And I said to him afterwards, "You know, why didn't you pull away?" And he said, "Because there's a switch on the bus door, and if they keep pulling that, it keeps the doors open." And he said there's something on the bus where the bus can't pull away when the doors are open. So we just had to stand there and have them sort of spitting and shouting at us. And there was quite a few people on the bus, and no one stood up.
No one did anything at all?
No.
Why have we ended up in this situation, Cheryl?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's easy to blame the parents, isn't it? I mean, they were in... The guys that got off the bus, I mean, they were quite young.
How old? How old?
I guess I would probably say early teens, maybe 14. And they got off sort of in the Deptford area, which, you know, London, it's not a particularly great area, I suppose. And my boyfriend at the time, funny enough, was a copper, so I phoned him straight away. But, you know, by the time he came down, they drove around that area, and of course there was no one to
what is his take on the kind of violence we're experiencing on the street? What does he make of it?
Well, actually, I haven't seen him for years, to be honest. We split up a while ago, but I remember at the time talking to him about stuff like this, and that he saw that a lot working in London.
Yeah.
And he actually did say largely he thought it was due to the parents in a lot of cases, because he said often when you get these kids on their own, like when you take them to the station and you chat to them, and you can try and, I don't know, build some kind of rapport with them or something. He said, you know, most of the time when you talk to them, they were actually fairly decent kids when you got them on their own.
And then they go out
and he said you'd drop them back at home and you'd see how their situation was at home, and, I don't know, the mum might be sitting there smoking a spliff or whatever. And it was kind of like, right, yeah, now I see.
All right, Cheryl, thank you.
And that's what all the police say. They say if we could stop domestic violence, I think just violence is just more general, isn't it? And if a lot of kids are being brought up in houses where there's a lot of domestic violence, then it's acceptable behaviour.
OK, well, let's move on after the break.